Good morning.
Morning.
The first thing I'd like to ask you to do, please, is to silence your cell phones. If any of you were at our last meeting, our recording is great, but cell phones kept going off. And we had flood warnings coming over the phone, you know what those sound like. So if you wouldn't mind, just silence them. You don't have to turn them off. If you'll silence them, that would be great. I want to draw your attention to a couple of things in the back of the room. So after our event today, I know our speakers will be happy to talk with any of you, but a lot of you have realized we have the American Red Cross in the back of the room. Terry, wave your hands. There she is. Yes, thank you. So Terry is a Sun City resident and a big-time volunteer for the Red Cross. And it's through Terry and Tina with the Red Cross that NPT was able to announce our free smoke detector replacement program. How many of you have signed up for that? Good show of hands. I have a little bit of bad news on that front. It is going to happen, but it's going to get a little bit delayed because all of the volunteers in Southern Nevada are deployed. They are either in Maui, or they are in Florida, or they're in your backyard. So I spoke with Tina on Wednesday, and apparently if you go down the Boulder Highway, there are homes down there that are still flooded, and they have about 2 or 3 inches of water in their home. FEMA does not give them any funds until the water is at 20 inches. So it has to be above your power outlets before you get any final assistance. I see Ken, who used to work for FEMA, is shaking his head. Yes. So it's devastating for those people, and the Red Cross is trying to help them. So it's only through donations that these people are going to get help. And like everybody else who lives in the desert, did you buy flood insurance? Yeah. So anyway, the Red Cross is going to be doing the event. We just want you to be patient. You have my phone number and Sherry's email address on all the notices for those smoke detectors. If you have a question, you can email or call us, and we will keep you posted. The first round are going to be done in October, and then it'll trickle from there depending on how many disasters we get. So they're predicting more hurricanes in the Pacific and more hurricanes in Florida, in that area. So cross your fingers that doesn't happen and that the volunteers can come back here and help us. I also want to mention our Sun City Night Out. For those of you who don't know about it or haven't read your Link magazine, on page 12 we have a full page ad. We are celebrating National Preparedness Month down there with a big, huge party. We have 4 food trucks, we have a cash bar, we have lots of dancing and some games. And we want everybody to show up and see our vendors. So Metro will be there. The American Red Cross again will be there. David, who is with LV Fires, will be there. Carolyn's office, the Las Vegas Office of Emergency Management, will be there. So it's going to be a great time, and a great time for everybody to get acquainted with disaster preparedness. The last thing I would like to say is we are very happy that Rudy Hamilton could join us today. I told him I was going to mess up his name. Stavros Anthony, our Lieutenant Governor, was invited to speak, but unfortunately he had another commitment. I think it was Lieutenant Governors Association meeting. Yeah, so go figure, he'd rather go there, right? But I met Rudy previously, and I was so impressed with his speaking, and I told him that night, and I'll tell you, that when I heard Rudy speak several months ago, I told him it was the best speaker I'd heard in over 10 or 15 years. So now he has something to live up to, right? So I mentioned he's the Chief of Staff to our Lieutenant Governor, and he served as an appointee for President George W. Bush, advising the President on Asian American and Pacific Island issues. And he served as a senior advisor to, and I'm not going to mess up his name either, senior advisor to United Nations President Miguel Diaz-Canel. For the past 14 years, Rudy has served as senior advisor for the U.S. Cyber Challenge, a national effort to recruit young cybersecurity enthusiasts into the federal government and the U.S. military. So, welcome, Rudy.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I mean, first of all, I just want to send a message. So Stavros, our Lieutenant Governor, I should say Lieutenant Governor, but we're all friends, right? Stavros is a big fan of Sun City. I mean, during his time with the City Council, he's always appreciated your love and support in all that he's done. So unfortunately, he's not able to make it. He's out of town, but he wanted to make sure that I convey his warm thanks for all your support through the years, and he looks forward to serving all of you in any way that he possibly can. Also want to thank Mary. Strong communities require strong leadership, so Mary, thank you for your leadership. Hopefully no disasters happen, but should a disaster ever happen, know that Mary, as a strong leader, has best prepared this community to address the challenges head on, to ensure that we mitigate any possible risk that could be out there to harm any one of us or our homes. So Mary, thank you for your leadership. David, a lot of people don't know, he served in our Navy. He protected our shores and protected our water, so we appreciate him for his service. And now he does everything he can to protect our residents and our community. And finally, just Carolyn, I'm really excited to hear what Carolyn has to say. When Stavros, our Lieutenant Governor, was in the City Council, he interacted quite a bit with Carolyn. Stavros, being a former police officer, obviously public safety and the safety of our community has always been in the forefront in every way he looks at every issue. So he's really excited about Carolyn, has great trust in Carolyn, and I'm excited that you'll have an opportunity to interact with her and hear what she has to say. So Carolyn, Lieutenant Governor, so I'm not a emergency preparedness expert by any means. But I do know a few things about it because I have a wife and I have 3 boys. My oldest goes to the Air Force Academy. We just had Parents Weekend this last weekend, so it was great to see him. We hadn't seen or spoken to him for a couple months. But strong community is very important to me. But part of that has to deal with being prepared for any emergency. Now, most people think about being prepared after watching a highly dramatic movie or watching a TV show where there's some apocalyptic event that happens, right? But in reality, disastrous events happen as a result of something simple, something that we see coming, but we don't think that the worst could possibly happen. What are some examples? I mean, we have some recent ones in Hawaii, right? No one expects a big fire or a small fire to become so ginormous that it impacts an entire community. We just had thousands of acres on fire in our southern borders with California. That created a lot of issues for families in southern Nevada. During the winter, this last winter, we had major storms up north that actually shut off power to thousands of families for weeks. And that was just Mother Nature. And then recently, we've had flooding that's still going on in Mount Charleston. Las Vegas saw a lot of flooding, but thanks to Carolyn, that a lot of that was mitigated. But we're still seeing a lot of flooding. And so, what does that mean to you? It means quite a bit. You know, we recently had a pandemic as an example, and if you remember, there were a lot of times that a lot of grocery shelves were empty, and we didn't have access to foods that we typically would easily just walk to the grocery store at Bonds or, what have you, and buy and enjoy. So, being prepared isn't about being prepared for a major disaster. It could just be simply being prepared for some simple weather change. And something that might be so simple could impact our lives for the next couple of weeks. So listen to a lot of what folks have to say here, because it could not just protect you and protect your family and protect your homes, but it will also protect your community. But as you learn more about the various strategies and tactics to better prepare yourself, I think the number one thing we need to do is focus on greater and stronger communications with each other. Because ultimately, we have to prepare for emergencies for ourselves. But to recover, we're going to rely on each other. And when you look at every community that bounces back from any natural disaster, they're bouncing back strong because neighbors are helping out each other. I don't love hearing about disasters, but what I love hearing about in the news is seeing the images and the stories of neighbors helping neighbors, right? You see tornadoes that run through the Midwest. We see the devastation. We see neighbors helping clean the front lawns of their other neighbors. We see families on islands hit by typhoons helping each other look for each other's pets or finding those mementos or those pictures that they so treasure. So as you learn about the various strategies and the tactics to better prepare yourselves for what could be a disaster, remember, one of the other areas we need to focus on is stronger communications with our neighbors, working together as a community, and if we do that, we can meet any disaster head-on in the strongest possible way, and if we're hit with disasters, we can bounce back quickly together. So, on behalf of the state of Nevada and our Lieutenant Governor, Stavros Anthony, thank you for all your leadership on stepping forward, because as you learn, you yourselves will be leaders, individual leaders in your communities, in your neighborhoods, and you're going to make a difference and not only help people claw their way from disaster, but give hope for a better tomorrow. So thank you very much. And thank you. Picture because I'm going to send it to Stavros. All right, everyone smile. Thank you, everyone.
Now, I know you all think that I planned this, what I'm going to say next, and talked to him prior to doing this, but I did not know anything he was going to say. But what a perfect lead-in. Mark, you're laughing, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. What was he talking about when he was talking about neighbors communicating with neighbors and neighbors helping neighbors in disaster? What's the one thing that we've been trying to do since this administration of NPT came in? Neighborhood watch. I am very happy to tell you we're really on track. You may have to pay off on your bet.
You get there.
Okay. So since July of last year, August, September, prior to getting actually elected to this illustrious position, I started a new Neighborhood Watch program based on what Mitzi and I had talked about, because it wasn't directed at seniors. It was materials that nobody knew how to go and talk to their neighbor next door. They didn't know what to say. So NPT took it, and we now help you, and we canvass the streets with you to help start these neighborhood watches. But what's really interesting to me is we're over 55 new neighborhood watches since last year, about September or so. My goal is 100, and if I get there, Dick has to buy me lunch at my favorite restaurant. And we had to take the summer off because it was too hot. I can't understand it, but nobody wanted to walk the street in 110-degree weather. So we are starting again. We have a orientation with Metro for Neighborhood Watch coming up in October. So as the temperatures go down, all you have to do is let us know. We do have sheets in the back of the room. If you're interested in learning more about Neighborhood Watch, you want to be in a watch, or you want to start a watch. And you can get more information from us before you make that decision, but you'll just have to fill out the form in the back of the room. Another thing that was interesting, I talked to David Ricketts, and he and I were communicating, and he lives in a community of, what'd you tell me, 5,000 homes?
Roughly.
And you have 50 people in your neighborhood watch.
If that.
If that.
If that.
So we have 50 watches, 55 watches that we started. That's on top of the ones that were already here. So we have about 100 watches, and if you average that each watch has about 20 homes, you can do the math, and that's 2,000 people in our neighborhood watch. So we are doing good, we just need to keep it up. I would like to introduce Carolyn Levering. So John and I had the pleasure of going over to the Emergency Operations Center for the City of Las Vegas, and it's really close to us. It's on Buffalo between Lake Mead and Cheyenne. And it is a fantastic facility that if you ever get the chance to tour it, it's really interesting. All John wanted to do was run the cops' three-wheeler or four-wheeler vehicle. I mean, there's a portable morgue, and I mean, there's all kinds of things over there. So it's very interesting. Mrs. Carolyn Levering leads the City of Las Vegas Office of Emergency Management. Pardon me. While spearheading community-wide preparedness programming, Carolyn and her team support and coordinate local and regional emergency responses, including flash flooding, wildfire, extreme weather events, influenza, and pandemic crisis, as well as the infamous 1 October 2017 mass shooting. Carolyn also serves as adjunct faculty to UNLV's Master of Science Emergency and Crisis Management program, teaching the Community Preparedness course since the program's inception in 2007. Her current appointments include Nevada State Emergency Response Commission, Vice Chair for the Nevada Commission on Homeland Security Finance Committee, and State of Nevada Resilience Advisory Committee. Carolyn's office, the Las Vegas Office of Emergency Management, will be joining us for our big party and celebration of National Preparedness Month on Friday, September 29th. She does have materials with her today, but you can also talk to them at our party on the 29th. Carolyn.
Thank you, Mary, for that fabulous introduction. Good morning, everyone. I know some of you. Hello, it's good to see you again. Am I close enough to the mic?
Oh.
No.
Yeah, we have some audio with our visual today, so we want to make sure you're able to hear it. Excellent. Thank you for having me here today. It's so nice to come out on the other side of COVID and to be able to get together again and to rejuvenate some of the activities that we were making some great progress on prior to the pandemic event. And we are really excited that people like you are putting forth your energy and your talents towards helping your community and your neighbors. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about emergency preparedness and the things that you can do. I think it was advertised as a blue sky day, what you can do when the sky is blue, right? We tend to forget that disasters happen, that emergencies are a problem in our community, because we do have so many beautiful blue sky days. But I'm here to talk about, what happens when the what if meets the reality. And hopefully we never have to use these skills and talents, but we're going to walk you through them today anyway. Why do we prepare? We prepare because we have a variety of hazards. Severe thunderstorms, of course, were our most recent hazard. We have extreme heat temperatures, and of course, man-made conditions can also be in the way of having a regular peaceful life and community. Some of these pictures are intended not just to concern you, but to remind you why we prepare for emergencies. It's for our friends, our family, our parents, our children, our grandchildren. Anybody here with great-grandchildren? Oh, wow. You guys are amazing, amazing. Very cool. So maybe some of this won't apply to you, but it may apply to your families, and especially for the young children in your families, to maybe poke and prod to make sure that they're prepared for emergencies that could affect them as well. What could realistically occur where you live?
No.
Maybe not this one. I hope. I don't know what had to happen to launch that car onto the roof like that. It could be a tornado. I've seen some pretty wicked tornado damage. It's pretty miraculous, the sheer force of those types of winds. But I think we experience things. I used to do this presentation where I would say, we haven't had a hurricane in about 100 million years. Yeah. Well, I have to reset the clock on that one, right? Even though Hillary didn't turn out to be quite what it was sold to be for our community, it was still interesting to consider that we would still experience the remnants of something like that, in addition to our normal monsoon weather. I'm going to hope this video will play for you and that you can hear it. Let's see if the mic works. I'm going to have to pause it.
In the afternoon, we could see some light precipitation to moderate precipitation later on, followed by powerful storm-like conditions. 75-mile winds are expected. Authorities are asking everyone, stay indoors.
We all love El Rover, right? So I love how that 30-second clip goes from blue sky, sunny day to light precipitation to a full-blown hurricane. And it happens that fast here in our community, right? The heat ramps up really fast, the winds ramp up really fast, and almost as soon as it's here, it's gone again, right? And a lot of the damages we saw from our flooding last weekend were people in their cars, right? And we've been touting turn around, don't drown for I don't know how many decades in this community, but there's always somebody gets caught up in it. And we had dozens of swift water rescues last weekend, dozens of them. Pretty outrageous, but it happens so fast. And a lot of people don't realize that if you just sit at home and wait a half an hour or even an hour, the water will be gone, right? And it'll be safe to be on the roads again. But people aren't patient these days, and so that's a problem for our community. So I want to inform you about some of the hazards we have in our community. Sometimes we have a lot of folks move to Las Vegas from other places. How many from Florida, Texas? And you've had hurricanes. Did you get rid of your hurricane kit when you came to Las Vegas? Yeah, I know you did. I know you did, right? A lot of people get rid of their disaster kits because they don't think anything happens here, but it does. It does. So types of disasters that we are subject to include natural disasters. Of course, our flash flooding is of concern. Earthquakes and wildfires are also an issue for our community. Natural hazards also can cause loss of life, but also loss of property. In the middle there, we've got our man-made disasters, which can include terror attacks. That particular photo is from 9/11. But other events, not necessarily caused on purpose, could be a sea burn event like Chernobyl in Russia not so long ago. Train derailment full of chlorine. We've seen a lot of train derailments this year. We have a major rail line cutting right through our community, right past the strip, that carries a lot of those kinds of materials. So those are some of the man-made hazards we are concerned with. And then, of course, technological disasters. So that could be a sudden or even a slow breakdown in technical capabilities, errors, whether they're voluntary or involuntary, that can cause destruction or death or damage. We're talking cybersecurity, we're talking attacks on our infrastructure, on our energy grid, on our water systems. Those are all things that can be done technologically and remotely, and something that is very difficult for us to protect against, but we work on that every day, again, while the sky is blue. So this chart might be interesting to you because it shows the top hazards that we plan for in the county-wide mitigation plan. You'll see the word terrorism isn't on there, but we are a large terror threat in our community. Just Sin City alone, right, attracts a lot of attention from international would-be terrorists. But that is not what we call so much a hazard, but a threat. So this is specific on our hazards that we have developed in our mitigation plan, a large, long-term future planning process to help mitigate disasters so that they're not as bad as they could have been. And perfect example under extreme weather is our flash flooding, our monsoons. As bad as last weekend was for us, and as horrible as it is to have those few inches of water in your house and the mud and the debris in the yards that come along with it, the fact of the matter is it could have been far, far worse. If we had not been planning our master control flood system since 1987, we would have had the 106 detention basins in place and the many miles many miles of channels that drain to those detention basins and allow that water to flow off to Lake Mead. This disaster could have been far, far worse for our community with a lot more lives So continued mitigation with the Clark County Regional Flood Control District is a major priority for us in our mitigation plans. And I want to talk about earthquakes a little bit. Anybody ever felt an earthquake here? Okay, yeah. And sometimes they're small, frequently they're small, and you have to even question, was that an earthquake? I'm not sure. And then you turn on the news and you hear, oh yeah, we felt an earthquake from California, right? They felt it a lot stronger than we did. But earthquake is the one disaster that my colleagues and I prepare for the most, because it's the one that can cause the most infrastructure damage to our community and create problems for us to get resources to people. An earthquake can take down our power lines, bust our gas pipelines, make our water undrinkable, and prevent us from being able to get shipments into town of vital resources, medications, foods, things like that. So earthquakes, one of our biggest hazards that we try to prepare for, because it's kind of the biggest thing we can imagine happening to our community, where it could affect multiple jurisdictions all at the same time, and then require us to make tough decisions on how those resources, the limited resources we have, how they're allocated. The damages to critical infrastructure, and it doesn't just take an earthquake to do this. This could be created from floods or from man-made attack. But if we have these kinds of damages, they will prevent ambulances from being able to reach people. Police and fire will be prevented from being able to reach the problem areas. Telephones, internet, power, water, sewer not working. Interruption to the flow of supplies. We'll be talking a little bit more about how that's so problematic for us. Did you know that we don't grow any food here? I mean, not in any appreciable amounts. We have a couple of farms, right, that have seasonal events and things like that. Maybe you have a tomato plant in your backyard, right? But we don't grow enough food to sustain our population of 3 million people. We only have about 3 days worth of food in our community at any given point in time. 3 days is not a very long time. Our main fuel line comes out of California. We do have a new one out of Utah, which is really helpful to us. But we had a fuel line disruption in February this year. And if it doesn't even have to happen here, right? We don't even have to have the earthquake here for it to become our disaster. Because if that fuel line is disrupted on the California side of things, it's going to be a long time before we see those resources here. And that fuel line's not just what's going into your car, it's what's going into our planes at the airport, it's what's going into generators, it's what's going into a lot of different resources here. And we always say make your kit to last at least 72 hours, right? 3 days, but that's really a minimum. It can take 10 days to get really powerful federal resources to us. There's a reason Maui and Hawaii always call us the ninth island, because we really are kind of an island right here in the desert. We're many hours away from help from any other large metropolitan community. So keep in mind that we depend on those kinds of resources much like Maui does, that the resources have to be brought in from somewhere else. And if we have a disaster that prevents us from doing that quickly, that can become a problem for you. So step 2 is creating a plan for your family. And nobody has the same family, right? Every family's different, is composed in different ways, and has different needs. So I'm hoping this video will work for you here.
So I've come up with the family emergency plan.
Great. What is it?
It's difficult to talk about, so I'm not telling you.
How will we know what to do?
You won't.
I'm so glad I don't have to remember anything.
Me too. Thanks for this, sweet. Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
this could really help a lot. Just communicating in advance what your expectations are, what your needs will be, what things you can offer support-wise. All of those things need to be discussed ahead of time. So sit down with your family and have that conversation sometime, and don't just keep it all in your head. One of my favorite quotes, plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. How many times have we heard about plans that gather dust on the shelf? Right? Nobody ever takes it down off the shelf to see what's in it. Well, because oftentimes plans are pretty boring to open and read, and it's difficult to find the information in them. But if you're the one who's gone through the planning process, it's so much more important. I'm not usually an advocate for consultants to come in and write plans for me, because then they get all the knowledge and information about how the plans got to get from birth to grave, so to speak, and then I don't have that information, that knowledge. So it's really important to be personally involved in your planning processes, because then you understand why certain decisions are made. Why are we responding in this way and not that way? Because you've already played it out in your mind in tabletop exercises and in discussions with your neighbors in your community. So keep that in mind. The plan itself at the end is just a byproduct. It's the process of planning that's really most valuable for you. Do you know your neighbors? Do you know what they do, what their hobbies are? Where are my radio operators? Okay, so yeah, shout out to ham radio. Hugely important resource for us in emergency management, because as we noted earlier, internet can go down, phones can go down. Maybe your cell phone's not working, but your texting capability is. But the radios, man, they always seem to work. They just always seem to work. So knowing who your neighbors are, if they have that kind of capability right there in your own backyard. Maybe a former electrician, a former registered nurse, right? A lot of capabilities exist in your community, people who've done these things their whole lives. That can be a resource to you in an emergency. How about knowing your community? How many of you hardly ever leave Sun City? Okay, so most of you are out and about. This is good. Do you always take the same route out? Yeah, maybe try the long way around sometime. Get to know other ways to get in and out of your community, because the way you normally go may not be accessible to you. And then just your stores, how to get to your favorite stores. They may not be open. Maybe you need to find some backup locations. And I don't know about you, but when I drive around town, sometimes I don't notice what's in front of me as far as names of stores and resources until I'm specifically looking for it, right? I'm not thinking where the gas station is until I get gas. So sometimes you might not thinking about the resource you need until you need it, and you might be surprised at all of the resources that are around you. So take a look around your community and the areas that you shop. And then if you do need to get out of town, what's the quickest way out? It's much better to shelter in place, folks. I'm just going to tell you that. Even with our limitations and resources, getting out of town is very difficult and challenging, and you're probably going to be stuck in traffic longer than anything. Having a predetermined family meeting spot in case communications go down. If you have family in town living in other parts of the community, maybe a son at work or a granddaughter at school, something like that, what happens if that earthquake happens on a school day, a work day, and you've got your family scattered across the valley? What's your plan to reconnect with them, to know that they're okay? And they're going to want to know you're okay too, right? So talk in advance about how you're going to get to know that everybody's okay in the absence of the internet and the telephone. Maybe you have a meeting spot. Maybe it's everybody go to grandma's house. Maybe it's everybody meet at the church. Whatever that might be for your family, plan that out. Think about that so that you have a way to find out that everybody's okay, and not utilize other resources for doing searches of people that are missing. Family reunification on Maui, major problem, right? Major problem. Nobody had those kinds of plans in place. So it's an issue we want you to be able to resolve ahead of time. knowing where your local police and fire stations are, your medical facilities, casinos have a lot of resources that you might be able to tap into. Grocery stores, of course, those get cleaned out pretty quickly. So it's important to have your plans in place and materials in your home that are available to you. Let's talk about water. Water. 1 gallon of water per person per day. That's the rule, and don't forget about your pets. If you don't have a plan for your pet's going to have plans for you. Right? Make a plan for your pet. Do you have enough water on hand? 3 to 10 days. And don't do it in those big 5-gallon jugs, right? Those are too hard to lift, right? Start looking at other ways to have water supplies at your home. How do you shut off your water in an emergency? You might need to be able to do that. If you haven't ever tried to shut off your water before or even find out where the box is, you need to go take a look at that. Where do you get water if your supply is compromised? Maybe you can boil water. We've seen that in Mount Charleston, right? Boil water order for some of those homes up there. Most of them no longer have to do it, but there are still some that are still boiling their water. And yeah, you can use your pool water for bathing, flushing your toilet kind of thing, but it's not something you want to be drinking. Those chemicals that you use to keep your pool pristine and clean, not good for your insides. So keep that in mind. Food. Everybody thinks Twinkies last forever, right? Right. I think their shelf life really is technically only 3 or 4 months, but you know, the joke is Twinkies last forever. But know what kinds of foods that you have in your pantry. How long is it going to last? What kind of supply do you have? Do you have food you're actually going to eat, or did you buy the canned specials knowing that, oh, this is going to live on my shelf for 10 years just fine, but I probably wouldn't want to eat it in an emergency? Don't buy that stuff. If you're not going to eat it on a weeknight, then don't put it in your emergency kit. Extra utensils and alternative means of cooking. Maybe you were an avid camper in another lifetime and you got rid of your Pullman stove, but man, that could have been useful to hang on to as an emergency capability, your Pullman and your propane. So think about alternative means of cooking if necessary. And a mobile food kit, right? Something that you can grab and take with you to your car or to a shelter if necessary, that has some things that will last a while. Some granola bars or dried fruit or beef jerky, and some water bottles in case you have to leave in a hurry, but need something to keep you going. Medical, this is hugely important, and again, this goes back to your family plan is your family plan and meeting your needs. So think about what basic medical supplies you need in your first aid kit. Some gauze and bandages, some sling materials to help with those sorts of things. You know where your medical care facilities are and how accessible they're going to be to you in an emergency. They're probably going to turn people away in a major event unless they have life-threatening conditions. So you need to be prepared to handle some pretty big things on your own. Extra prescriptions, eyeglasses, batteries for hearing aids, all of those things are important additions to your kit. Other item, I know I always keep my old glasses in my kit, right? Every time I get a new pair of glasses, I put my old pair in my kit. It may not be perfect, but it's the most recent thing I've got in case I've lost my glasses. Tweezers, utility knives, diapers if there's babies in your lives, those kinds of things are really important to have in a kit because they're hard to come by in an emergency. And don't forget about your pets. Please, please, please have a plan for your pets. We've gotten a lot better with accepting pets at our emergency shelters, but they're still a challenge for us. And it's really important that if you have a leash and a carrier and food and medical information, is your pet up to date on their shots? Those things are all super important in an emergency. And another great thing, this was actually really useful after Katrina, of all things. A lot of people separated from their animals. Having a picture of you with your pet really helps reconnect you when you have to go to a shelter and find your lost animal. Having that picture is really helpful. So keep that as part of your kit as well. All right, step 3, getting the whole family involved. So we already talked about not sharing your plan. So what happens when we do get the whole family involved?
So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect, that's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice. And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
We couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys. Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
All right, are you getting the theme here? I'm a little sarcastic with my presentations, right? So, yeah, you couldn't be any less prepared when you've got the dead batteries in your kit and you forget to make the list and all those sorts of things. So, just having a little fun with you all there. Just make sure that when you're working with your family on a plan that everybody helps, everybody plans, because like I said, plans are useless, planning is indispensable. Keep everybody engaged and involved. Small children, your grandkids, they can get involved with their plans. They can build a pillowcase kit, right? Red Cross Friends, you know, a pillowcase kit that they can have for an emergency. Looking at where your families are spread out across the day during the week, and making sure that if you do have kids, grandkids, that they have immediate information, contact information about parents. Sometimes kids forget their phone numbers, they forget their addresses, they forget a lot of things when they're traumatized. So it's important that that kind of information is readily available. All right, practice and maintain the plan. One more little quick video for you. And again, you know my sense of humor now, right? All right. Put your plan into action, right? You don't know if your plan's going to work until you take the time to practice it. So this is not how I recommend practicing your plan. I'm not always a big fan of no-notice exercises, although my management really loves to pop in when we're doing a tabletop exercise and they tell the poor department in question, your computers all went down. How are you servicing your customers now? Yeah, they don't much like that, but my management team loves to do that. So keep in mind, think about your plan. Does it really work? Try practicing it, putting it into action. If you've never practiced getting out of your home in a fire, and I think David's going to talk a little bit about fire safety as well. Those are kinds of things that are really important to practice. And that's why I also encourage you to take our community emergency response team training. How many of you are signed up for this weekend's class? Oh, I thought it was more. Okay, maybe we have like at least 20 people in that class. So it's a great way to learn some basic skills. If you've never used the fire extinguisher under your sink before, when something is on fire is not the time to figure out how to use it, right? You want to know how to use these things in advance. So just keep that in mind. Make sure your plans are realistic and practice them, because you might find some gaps and holes in them that you can improve upon. So at the end of the day, and I'm wrapping up because I think I've taken way too much of your time already, but it involves all of us, but it begins with you. That's how preparedness happens in our community. And some more resources for your use. I have some handouts at the table here. One includes links to our Southern Nevada Community Preparedness app. It's a really great tool that will help you build your emergency plan and give you some resources too. We've got logs about our different types of hazards and even an SOS capability from your phone using that app. And also, we've got our volunteer program that's starting up. We're calling that the CERT 3B. So after you've had your CERT training, you can take a look at volunteering. The State Emergency Management Office also has preparedness pages, and ready.gov, redcross.org, and aarp.org have some excellent preparedness materials that you might find very useful for your planning purposes. I would ask for questions, but I'm afraid I've gone way over my time.
That's all right.
Very good. What kind of questions can I help you with today? Yes, ma'am.
Hold on, Becky, let me get you a mic.
class that starts tomorrow, will that happen again in the near future?
Yeah, absolutely. If you go to our nbcert.org website, it has a list of all the classes we're offering around the valley. Our office does this training for all of Clark County. Nobody else does this program but us. And in fact, next weekend we're going to be all the way out in Searchlight doing a program out there. They got hit pretty hard from storms too. So Searchlight, Laughlin, Moapa, Indian Springs, but of course in the urban core we're in Henderson. We're here in Las Vegas, North Las Vegas. We do the training for the whole valley, and it's on that website, nbcert.org. Sorry.
I was a Culver City Cert for 3 years. I checked here and I gave my certification.
You have to hold it up to your mouth closer.
I was in Culver City Cert for 3 years when I lived there, and I was a radio operator, and I was a Red Cross and American Heart instructor. And I moved here and I gave my certification that I did train in CERT. Does that qualify me for a group who rather than having to take the training again?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, if you've done the training, absolutely, for sure. You can utilize that today. But you are welcome to also take the course again. We offer refresher programming as well, so you can just refresh your skills and not have to do the whole 18 hours again, because that can be a very long time. I understand that. Yeah. We have another question here.
Is this information on the screen in any of the brochures we picked up?
Yeah, the app especially, that card, there's a little card on the table there that shows the app, and the other side of it is the CERT training. So both the CERT and the Preparedness app are on that same card on the table in front.
Anyone else? All right, Carolyn, thank you so much. So how many of you were at the last Board of Directors meeting? Oh, that's not good. I'm seeing the hands of Board of Directors. I'm glad you guys show up for those.
If it wasn't held on Tuesday morning and I'm playing golf, I would be there.
Well, one of the things that came out of the session that they had prior to that meeting is that we have now, with Mitzi, formed what's called the Emergency Readiness Committee. We talked amongst ourselves and decided we didn't want to call it the Preparedness Committee because you're always trying to be prepared. We want to get to the point where we are prepared. We want to be ready. So we are going to help the residents develop these plans that Carolyn's been talking about. So you'll see seminars coming up next year that will help you build these kits. They will give you the resources to find some of this stuff, and we will be bringing in some of the resources to help you. So these emergency food kits, Mark happens to have one at his home, so we're going to work together and try to bring some of this in so you guys don't have to try to go find everything on your own. But I would encourage you, see Carolyn and her information. If she runs out of information today, again, her office will be at our big event on the 29th at the Gratitude Garden. You can talk with them there. Also, I'm very pleased that Carolyn mentioned the ham radio group. I would like you guys to stand. So you haven't seen it yet, but Mark did a big favor for me, and after 9/11, I think everybody learned how important ham radio is. But there are some new articles that came out about how what the importance of ham radio was when the Maui wildfires started. If it weren't for ham radio, that disaster could have been worse than it already is. And the same with Idalia, the hurricane in Florida. So we're very fortunate to have a very active ham radio group, and they're very happy because they met with Mitzi, and we are getting a new antenna up on top of our Pinnacle Community Center, which they will be able to communicate throughout the valley. So if you see that happening, that's what's going on there. It's really super important. A couple of the hams, I call them hamsters, but a couple of the hams, and John Lang and I went over to Sun City Anthem recently, and we met with Sun City Anthem because talk about a community that is prepared. They already have a plan for their community. We don't have such a plan in Sun City. So Where would you go if you needed first aid? No one knows. Those kinds of things are the things we're going to develop in these plans. So it's a long-term project, but we're getting started, and I was so happy, Carolyn, to have you say there's 20 or 22 people at the CERT training that starts tomorrow and ends on Sunday. So we will be advertising it again. But in January, I'm giving you forewarning here, in January, we will be holding a class by the American Red Cross called Be Red Cross Ready. It is a 1-hour program, so anybody can do this program. So come in January to Be Red Cross Ready. And then you're going to hear from David now. David did a fire presentation for us in July, and I think there were a lot of mouths hanging open when we learned what David was teaching us. And the one thing that sticks in my head is you taught us everything that the fire department can't tell you. They're not allowed to tell you certain things. So David's not on the fire department, so he's educating us. But the great thing is we had a good turnout, but we know people who missed that event, so we've already rescheduled David, and he will be talking in March, and it will be an evening event. So if you know people who work or people who just don't want to give up their card games, David will be doing that presentation again in March, and I highly recommend it. And David's there at our big party this month too, so come and visit with him. He is a certified fire safety advisor with Global Health and Safety and LV Fires. He is, as Rudy said, he is a former U.S. Navy firefighter, and he will cover the topic of you can have a fire.
Good morning. All right, raise your hand if you were here in July when I did my fire safety. Now keep your hand up if you had me come out and do your evaluation. Good. I do recognize a lot of faces here, and I'm going to show you actually the report. It's not the final report, but the report that I sent to Mary on what I did find in a lot of these homes here. All right? Now, so everyone that had me come out, you probably received a home safety checklist packet from me, or a fire extinguisher, or a fire blanket, or emergency kit. So that's something that we've been doing here in Las Vegas, and North Las Vegas as well, since 2015. We give away fire extinguishers if you don't have one, fire blankets. Raise your hand if you don't know what a fire blanket is. This is a fire blanket. If you have a fire in your kitchen, what would you do? How would you put it out? Well, you don't have a blanket, do you?
Baking soda on it.
Baking soda, I hear that a lot of times. Salt, flour, extinguisher. Mary said it. I believe it was actually, no, Carolyn said it. Who has a fire extinguisher underneath their kitchen sink? Now, has it been under there for more than a year? More than likely, it got pushed further and further back. It probably has a lot of dust on it, and you probably don't know how to use it, right? Well, these fire blankets are a great alternative. When our kids were probably 6 years old, 5 or 6 years old, we taught them how to use these. These are a lot easier and a lot lighter than an extinguisher. You can use this on any type of a fire. The one that I have in my kitchen, it hangs on this hook, and you just pull it out by the straps, and you just smother the fire, and that's it. There's nothing to clean up. All right? So anyone that's interested, you can still schedule with me to have me come out and do a free home fire safety evaluation. Now, the topic of my speech today is going to be on You Can't Have a Fire. But these are all the free services that we provide to the public. When we come out, we can test your smoke alarms and change your batteries. I just ask that you provide the batteries for us. We can check and test your fire extinguishers, check your appliances for recalls. I found a lot of recalls that you guys had in the homes. Review recommended placement of fire safety equipment. Who here, by raise of hands, has a fire extinguisher in your master bedroom? That is the #1 place you should have a fire extinguisher. Because when people lose their lives in a home fire, 9 times out of 10, those fires happen between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. when you're sleeping. So if you have it out in the kitchen or in the garage, are you going to be able to get out of that bedroom and go get it? You may not.
Because what if that fire is in the hallway? We're blocking you from getting to the kitchen. And we also provide you with the home safety checklist, which allows you to correct certain things in the house that we may have found. Now, yes, I am a former fireman. I've done extensive fire training down at Texas A&M with the Fire Research Laboratories. So some people would call me an expert on fire safety. That's fine. But the information that we share with you comes from the experts that we're all familiar with, mainly the NFPA. Things that you'll see on the news and information from insurance companies. Now, one thing that I did find, and I find this in every big group class that I do, is that when I ask this question, which I'll ask right now, raise your hand if you've ever had a home fire. Now, when I came out to a lot of your homes, I won't point out anybody, but you admitted to me that you did have a fire. You were just too embarrassed to admit it in front of everyone else. And something else that may startle some of you is that some of your neighbors here, some people here today, have had a fire, you put it out, but you still did not call the fire department. You have to keep this in mind, is that especially if it's electrical, that fire, something can be dwindling inside of the walls or in your attic and you will not see it or smell it. So always call the fire department. So the misconception, this is the biggest misconception when it comes to home fires, that most people believe that it will not happen to them. For all of you that have never had a home fire, in the back of your mind you're thinking it's not me. It's going to be that older guy down the street that forgets that he has the stove on. Or it's going to be those young kids around the corner that have so many electronics plugged into the house. That's how their fires start. But it won't happen to me. I'm careful. But raise your hand if you have a car at home. If you have a car.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, has anyone here, by a raise of hands, ever been in a car accident that was not your fault? Did you wake up that morning thinking or knowing that you would have a car accident? No. The first fire training class that I ever did down in Texas, the fire instructor said this: fires are a result of everyday living. There are things that we do every day that can start a fire by accident. Not just by forgetting something in the kitchen. It could just be a faulty product that you may have in your house. So a few statistics. It says that 8 out of 10 fire deaths occur at home. The reason being is because we have our guard down. We're relaxed at home. At work and in school, we do usually fire drills and safety meetings. But most of us in here have not had any kind of formal fire safety training since stop, drop, and roll when we were this big. Nighttime fires are the most deadly. Fire departments respond to fires every 24 seconds in the U.S. Now, on an app, and Carolyn brought up some of the really good apps. There's another app that I have on my phone. It's called Pulse Point, P-U-L-S-E Point. You can see all the fires and emergency calls that the fire departments, North Las Vegas, Henderson, Las Vegas Fire and Rescue, and Clark County Fire Department respond to. As of this morning, when I first came in, Clark County Fire Department responded to 9 fires this morning, and one of them was a vehicle fire. Now, let me ask you guys a question. Could you guys have a fire inside of your house? Yes. Some of you are still saying no. I know. Let's look in the most common part of the house where fires start, is in the kitchen. Now, I know a lot of you guys may not cook as much as you did 10, 20, 30 years ago. I understand that. Don't laugh. But raise your hand if you have a coffee pot at home. All right, I won't mention the company, but some of you already know that the largest fire recall from a coffee manufacturer, they recalled over 7 million of their units for spontaneously starting fires. But the kicker is they weren't in use, they were just plugged in. A lot of times I go into homes and people have their coffee pot, their toaster oven underneath their cabinets. Always pull it out. Don't let it sit underneath there because it can heat up underneath that cabinetry. When was the last time that you took your toaster and got out all those old breadcrumbs? A lot of you guys are smiling. You haven't done that, I know. I'm guilty of that as well. But every time that you have something in the microwave, I know it has a timer, the oven, the stove, set a timer. because we are all guilty. We can all forget that we have something cooking. So whether if it is our dishwasher that malfunctions, yes, dishwashers can start a fire, our microwaves, and obviously our ovens can start a fire. Now in the garage, something that is unique here and other golf communities is that you guys have golf carts. And a lot of you may charge your golf carts in your garage. So because of that, I actually got some good information from some of you guys in here about golf cart fires. I didn't know how often those things can start fires. I didn't know that there's some of them, there's multiple batteries, I guess, inside of them, not just one. But a lot of them that I did see, the terminals were corroded. There was a lot of rust, even leakage that I saw. We have to keep in mind that we have to make sure that we keep up with the maintenance on certain things that we, actually everything that we have inside of our house. But other things that can start a fire in our garage. We have our garage door opener, water heater, furnace. On the report, I believe over 20 of you guys here have replaced your water heater at least 2 or 3 times in 15 years. So what does that say? We all know that the water is not the best here in Las Vegas. It's very hard, so certain things do need to be maintenance a little bit more often. Now, in the laundry rooms, most people are pretty good about cleaning out the lint trap after every time that we run the dryer. But when was the last time that you pulled your dryer out and cleaned the vent? That should be done between once every year or once every 2 years, depending on how many people are inside the house. That gets clogged up. It's just like the artery of a heart. The easiest way to tell if it's not functioning efficiently is if it's taking longer for your clothes to dry. That means the air is not going through. And lint from your dryer is very flammable. So make sure that you get that done. Plug-ins, night lights, cell phone chargers were actually some of the biggest things that I saw in a lot of your homes. Who charges your cell phone at night while you're sleeping? If I saw you, please put your hand down. I hope you're not doing that anymore. We used to do that. Do not, your cell phone carrier will tell you, do not charge your cell phone when you go to sleep. Go to Google once you get home and type in cell phone fires or cell phone charger fires. You'll see one of two things. Either people leave it plugged in and it's at 100% and still running the power through, or you're just leaving the cell phone blocks plugged in and it's still using energy, still burning that thing up. So even after you're done charging your cell phone, unplug the block itself from the wall. Raise your hand if you have a laptop, iPad, or a Kindle at home. You ever use it in bed when you're laying down? Things like that. Don't let them rest on your couches. Don't charge them on your couches. Don't charge them on anything soft. When you charge them on the countertops, or on your nightstands while you're awake. Now, if you have grandkids or great-grandkids, that second asterisk there, it says more than 2 out of 3 children don't wake up to the sound of smoke alarms, which is a very big deal. Think about this. How many times have you seen kids dead asleep in church? Choir singing, or in the car you're blasting your radio, they're knocked out. Kids will sleep through certain things. Their ears aren't fully developed yet. But let's look at this here. Some of the other things that we do have in our house that we didn't have 30 years ago. Candles are something that I see in a lot of households. Unfortunately, it's pretty odd that I see a lot of parents are letting kids have candles in their bedrooms. It's very disturbing, actually. My sister, she started a fire in her apartment years ago, having a candle in the kitchen, and it was too close to the drapes. She was able to put it out, but candles should always be in the center of a table. And if you have pets, be very careful, because pets, depending on the pet, they may have toys and throw toys around. We just got a new puppy. She throws her toy around all the time. It can easily land on the table. If we had candles, it can knock the candle over. Things like that happen. Once again, fires are results of everyday living. Now, these are some of the scariest fires. These are the fires that we do not see coming. These are the fires that can start from lightning strikes. In Siena, I believe earlier this year in maybe February, March, one of their most recent fires that they had was a lightning strike that hit the palm tree right next to the house. Ceiling fans, bathroom fans. Most of us in here know Tim. Tim Szymanski. That's how his house fire started, from his bathroom fan. Some of the hits that I found in the households were the same as what was going on at Tim's. You should actually take your vacuum hose and vacuum that dust out of your fan. That motor that is in there is about this big, and if it gets caked up with dust, it can seize up the motor and overheat. So make sure you vacuum that out every so often. Wall sockets. Now, if you have an outlet that does not work in your house, do not sit and not call an electrician for years and years and years. That is something that I was very disturbed about finding in some of the households here in Sun City, is that you said you had an outlet that didn't work or a switch that didn't work. And when I asked, well, how long has it stopped working? Oh, about 3 or 4 years. Call an electrician, a licensed contract electrician, to come out and take a look at it. Something is going on with that. And all the wires that we have in our walls, ceilings, and subfloors. Now, we don't have any basements here. Water heaters. Your water heaters and furnaces, for you guys, they're in the garage. You should have at least a minimum of 3 feet of clear space from your water heater and your furnace. So make sure you don't have your recyclables, cardboard boxes, plastic, Christmas wrapping paper, things like that, flammables, near that water heater. Put it on the other side of your garage.
We all have junk drawers.
So these are the 3 ways that a fire can happen to any of us. We can all have an absent-minded moment, such as stepping away from the stove, a faulty or recalled product that can catch fire, or a natural disaster like lightning striking our home. Now, I'm going to share with you this quick video. This fire was last October. You may remember this from being on the news, but I can guarantee you this couple did not think that they would have a home fire.
At this hour, a man and woman are dead after an early morning fire at home in the northwest part of town. Las Vegas Fire and Rescue say when they arrived, the home was fully engulfed and heat and flames were too intense to enter. Good afternoon, and thanks so much for joining us at 4. I'm Kirsten Joyce.
And I'm Christian Costa. As well, it happened around 4:30 this morning in the upscale community of Lamplights Estates. That's near Farm and Buffalo and Centennial Hills. Victoria Saha is there with more on what neighbors are saying. Victoria.
Yeah, this is all a tight-knit community. The last fire engine actually just left, but you can see crews are out here now putting up fencing around the house. That fire is so intense, pushing debris from it all the way across the road. Neighbors on Bachelor's Button Drive awakened by the intensity of the fire.
So I woke up looking out and I saw these flashing red lights.
George Noble rushed out to see what was going on.
By the time I got there, it was already sort of being put out. They had the big, the ladder extended out to the top of the roof, spraying the fire everywhere. Spraying water everywhere.
Las Vegas Fire and Rescue were called to the home at 4:30 this morning. And by the time they arrived, the fire quickly spread through the 6,000 square foot home. The flames so intense, firefighters had to pull back. Eventually, the roof collapsed. You can see from our 8 News Now drone the extensive damage to this luxury home. While fire crews were putting out hot spots, they say they found the bodies of a man and a woman. Neighbors say they do know the man who owns the house.
He's a good guy. We used to go for walks. He talks to my kids, plays around. Yeah, nice guy.
I did talk with some other neighbors here. They describe their neighbor as always working on his house. They say he actually recently renovated it. They say the smoke was so intense. Everyone right over here on that house, I was actually able to smell it from inside. Reporting live from Centennial Hills, Victoria Saha, 8 News Now.
6,000 square foot house, huge. Now, anyone in the local fire department, we know that any house over 4,000 square feet has to have sprinklers. It doesn't matter how prepared we are. I'm getting chills when I think about this because one of my high school friends, he's a retired NFL player, he lives on that street, he knew the couple as well. But it doesn't matter how prepared we are with our home, we still have to know what we do. I love those videos that Carolyn had We have to have a plan, but practice the plan. Do not just talk about it, but actually do it. It may sound silly, oh, let's do a fire drill. We have to do it. Since our kids were 4 years old, we practiced fire drills until they were 16. They couldn't stand it. But guess what? I'm a home fire survivor. I know how scary it is. I know how real it is. And that's why you have to practice. I do not want to see any of you with your house on the news saying that you had a fire first and foremost, but secondly, that you didn't make it out. So please, above all, listen to what all three of us have said. Prepare, prepare, and practice. Thank you.
Thank you, David. So the little bit he gave you there is just a snippet of what he presented in July and will present again in March. So if you didn't make the July presentation, look for our announcement. One thing I was wondering, maybe we could do something like this, David.
Yes.
You and I could work together, because I'm getting phone calls from residents and they don't know who is a legitimate person to hire to clean out the dryer vent. So we can't distinguish the guy who does a good job, charges a reasonable amount of money, is trustworthy, versus, the guy who says he's doing it and basically does nothing. So maybe you and I could work something out. I would say if we had enough people here, we might be able to get a group discount, right? Yeah, and so I'll work with David on that. That's one of the biggest things, because as seniors, there's none of us that want to get down on the ground, because without a plan as to how we're going to get up. And that's the plan I look at every day. So we don't want to get out on the ground, or we don't have the equipment, or we don't have you have to unscrew something to get the vent off, all that kind of stuff. So David and I will work on that. Anyone have a question for David? Anything? Are you all in shock? Not one here.
Do those spray extinguishers equal what you need to a fire extinguisher? Regular, you just get the spray.
Oh, the spray can? All right, so was it Tim that came out and told you guys about it? It was Tim, right? And a lot of the households here, I saw in the kitchens, you guys had the little aerosol can of, I forgot what it's called, to put out a fire. Now, the reason a lot of times that I'll see that public information officers tell seniors to use those is because, raise your hand if you have arthritis. Okay. Maybe arthritis, you may not just be as strong to pick up a 5 to 10 pound extinguisher, and you may forget how to use it as well. Pushing that button is very simple and easy. Fantastic. Just make sure that you do maintenance and shake it every probably 6 months, just to make sure the material doesn't harden up on the inside.
What's it called? What is it called?
I forgot what it's called.
I don't remember. It's called. Just look in your department, your market, or anywhere, Amazon.
I'll look into them, and
Yeah.
I'll get with David, and I'll put something out to all of you. So if you're in a neighborhood watch, your captain's going to get the information, so make sure they're sending this on to you. One thing that I want to tell you is David and I are communicating all the time, and he was always sending me information, and I sent him one the other day. We both had seen it about the same time. There was a huge recall by Costco of a charger for your cell phone. Huge recall, but unless you went on the Costco page, you wouldn't know it. And unfortunately, the company that manufactured them is no longer in business. So the biggest thing that I took away from one of the talks was the amount of recalls on appliances. If you have a refrigerator that has a recall on it, you don't even know it. So when David comes out and does these evaluations for you in your home, he knows if your appliance has a recall on it. So just like the police department, Manny comes out and does the assessment of your home for neighborhood watch to make sure you're protected, where are you most vulnerable for break-ins, that kind of stuff. Think of David the same way. He's doing that as a free service, and I can tell you there's several people in the audience who've had him come out and do this evaluation of their home and told me that it was just life-changing. One of them has an electric vehicle that she was charging overnight in her garage, which, you would, right? Not after she heard David's talking about it. After David came out to the home, she unplugs it when she goes to bed at night. So, all of this is be prepared, be prepared. I can't say it enough. And please, if you have any experience that you think you can help us with this new Emergency Readiness Committee, if you were in utilities, if you worked in construction, if you worked as a first responder, we need people to join this committee. The goal would be that the committee will be both residents and staff members here in Sun City. And like I said, it's a long-term project. But it's one we're going to be calling on Carolyn's office for assistance with. David's going to help us with the fire portion of it. And I think it's just wonderful. I cannot thank you enough for coming out today. Come to our big outdoor party, learn more, talk one-on-one with these people and the others that are going to be there. The Red Cross, again, is in the back of the room. They will not take your money as far as a check goes. Everything's electronic now. But if you want to donate to the Red Cross for maybe the victims of the Maui wildfires or whatever, you can write the check out to the American Red Cross and I will take it for you and get it to them to donate. So if you don't have the ability to go online and still want to donate, you can do that. So again, thank you, Rudy. Thanks for coming. Thank you, Carol and David. And go out and start your plan and be safe. Thank you.
I'll go back to where I was.
All right. No phone down.
Yeah. So I just have to get my name and address, phone number, and email. Perfect. Thank you.
Absolutely.